Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Rich Show. Never really called it that, but here you go. This is Crypto Rich, and I'm joined by Johnny Vedmore. This is going to go out on both our platforms in some way or other. Hey, Johnny.
Hello. You call it the Crypto Rich Show.
Uh,
Woo!
I've never called it the Crypto Rich Show, but I'm going to call it something. I'm Crypto Rich. That's Johnny Vedmore. We're going to talk all kinds of crazy conspiracy, deep, dark, secret stuff. Yes,
Yeah, I like a little bit of conspiracy. I do. I'm conspiratorial. I
you are
believe
very
that people,
conspiratorial.
I believe, and this is, stop me if you think I'm wrong, but I believe that more than one person conspires to do something every single day. Even sometimes multiple people do this every day. Two of them will say, let's do something, and then they'll do it.
Definite conspiracy.
Yeah, definitely
Definite
conspiracy. All
conspiracy.
a bunch of bastards.
Yeah. No, well, what I reached out to you to record this video because I think you posted something about Tulsi Gabbard being a member of the Council of Foreign Relations and not to be trusted.
Mm.
Now, before we go into why you said that and picking it apart, I've always had a an appreciation of Tulsi Gabbard because of her anti-war stance. And then, the things that she said that I thought, talking about fighting corruption, back to the Constitution. What I've not supported her with and agreed with is her pro-Zionist policy. But then, how many mainstream politicians in the US aren't pro-Zionist, right? But she talking about against unjust wars and everything, right? And she's from the left, which is where I'm from traditionally, and I think you're from as well traditionally. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
that's my perception of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then that they um, Trump wants her as the director of national intelligence, which means that she'll get to coordinate all the intelligence information and everything, and can feed it to him. And she has a big say in what happens with the spy agencies. And then you posted something that been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and she's not to be trusted. She's a Manchurian candidate.
Right, I'd say that's about right. I'm not sure. Did I say Manchurian
No,
Candidate?
you didn't. I'm saying that.
Yeah. I would definitely say that she is on the far end of the spectrum of what we'd call controlled opposition. I do believe that you, like me, and like many other people, have been suckered in by a few things. Number one, the use of the word namaste. Everybody likes the word namaste. You can't really get away with it. She's got this Hawaiian sort of like tilt to her. It's very pretty. She's gorgeous, absolutely. Especially when she was a bit younger, she was absolutely and utterly delightful, hard not to look at. And when I was much more idealistic. That wasn't that long ago. When I was much more idealistic, I really did believe that the sun shone out of her proverbial booty. I thought she was one of the greatest things, but there was a load of, I was easily caught by the sort of what I suppose a liberal constructs back then because we were so, and I think lots of people were partially because we so detest this left wing sort of wokeism that when
Yeah,
we
the
see
WEF
someone,
agenda.
yeah, so when we see someone on the left who we can appreciate and associate with, we're like, oh my god, it's a breath of fresh air, and that's part of the thing that's been created. That's part of the thing that's been created. She's an extreme. I mean, she's always before she was in politics and when she was in the army her partner I believe was in local politics, so there is a little bit of she's always been around it. She served in Iraq. She goes on about her service as being extremely proud and etc, and she is critical about some parts of the war on terror, but it's really easy to both fight in something and then criticize it. That's as easy as to fight and not fight in it and criticize it, or it's really easy to criticize something, but if you took part in it, then it lowers the value of that critique, in my opinion. Now, yeah, I know. I agree. I see you. I mean, for if someone's just listening to this, I agree. I'm giving you the weaker arguments first. So I believe that she was a good figure, a left wing figure, a breath of fresh air. A lot of that kind of started to fall away during and after the first Trump run because it was clear um, that things were changing, that the left wing in America was really co-opted and that you couldn't trust anybody. And once I realized that, I started to take off the proverbial they live sunglasses and have a proper look at people. And one of the things that was, there was a lot of rumors about it. There was a lot of people posting up Tulsi Gabbard, this picture of her showing a pyramid with her hands outside the Capitol building. You don't even know the hands could have been put in after or whatever, blah, de, blah, de, blah. And I was like, oh, well, I'll look into this a bit because I do like her so much. I would hate it if she's actually working for the other side. That would be even make me even more angrier than the people who work for the other side, the people who pretend to work for us, to, gain our support, sometimes just through natural attraction and things like that. Because I think that's what was with me is that I mean, I'm a man and
Mhm,
I look at a pretty woman and I go googly eyed and then I lose my senses. That's
mhm.
basically being a man in general. So I was
Tragic but true.
yeah, I was aware that could happen, and then I did a bit of research. Yeah, she was in the CFR for one term. They do these kind of runs where you get brought into the CFR, and then they give you jobs for 3 4 years to do and maintain. Probably give you an agenda, and then you either stay publicly in the CFR for another of these terms, 3 to 4 years, I think it is, or you look, they look like you're no longer in it. It's a little bit, nuanced that no one really knows what your association is with them anymore. She went on. She had to do this like during it was. I think it was during the vaccine. She had to go on some shows. Like she went on Pastor's show, and with Nico House. It was Pastor and Nico House, who are some American indie news commentators. Pastor's quite. I like him, but they reside on the wet, get taken control of every part of the positive side of the left wing paradigm. So they are like, if Bernie Sanders says something back in the day, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's right, and he's after our best interests and all of this," but he is part of the establishment. I mean, the establishment exists in all its parts, and I'm someone who spends a lot of time trying to explain one part of this, how this paradigm works. And it is the balance. It's the balance. They don't only control the thesis, they control the antithesis. They create the antithesis. And one of the best creation or best signs that there's a created antithesis is that they are a major part of the core, the nuts and bolts of the establishment. So military, intelligence, government of some kind. There's always a part of all policy institutes. That's the one that's nowadays. People become members of policy institutes. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations is a nefarious institution that comes kind of from Chatham House. They were created roughly at the same time. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. If you go look for J. Edgar Hoover, or who I called in the first quiz show that I did the other day, Truth Bomb, J. Edgar Hoover. He was someone who received a load of letters in the 50s, 40s, and 50s about people concerned about the power of the Council on Foreign Relations, and they're available to read as well. It's very interesting. It's a very nefarious institution. It's obviously mixed up with intelligence. People swap in between CFR and intelligence all the time. And listen, it's like once the Mossad, always the Mossad. It's
Yeah.
the same thing goes with the CIA. I watched her like a hawk after I lost that. So I started to have doubt. And one of the things is that I kind of watch people's tone, how they speak. Now she's very PR orientated, extremely
She's
well.
very good.
Yeah,
She's
she'll
very good.
sit there on a video and she'll give you reasons, good reasons. They seem like logical reasons, but underneath she'll be pushing. When push comes to shove, she'll push the vaccine, she'll push the agenda, she'll do everything. She'll bend over in just exactly the same way. She comes from the left. I always saw her as more of an independent, and I wasn't surprised at all when she flipped right because she's like. In a sense, what the neocons are. This is what you see in libertarians. Libertarians kind of split between the left and the right whenever they want to. They can take in most of this, but then they can be like, "Oh, my concerns are overridden in this one area." And libertarians are very well known for being one or two issue folks. I know I am. I know I am, and I would probably class myself as a libertarian. So I'm not surprised to see her flit around. That could just be being a libertarian, but the big test was things like COVID. Um,
Was she pro the injections? Was she pro
yeah,
mandates? Was she pro
yeah,
lockdowns?
yeah. So well, no, 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 no. She came out as a critic of some of the lockdowns and other parts, but she was pro all of the rest of it and believe in medical science and all of this sort of stuff. She just lockstep. She's part when the proverbial poop hits that proverbial fan, those who are part of the establishment go into lockstep on certain issues, and you see it. This is why I
Okay,
feel the same about Nigel Farage as well. People like
okay,
that flip into no, the establishment narrative's right and everybody else is wrong. And then they flip back out of it again afterwards and go, "Oh, I was just wrong on that occasion. It's fine." And if you invest in them again, and this another one of these events happen, they flip back into lockstep again.
okay. So I didn't know her stand on the injections and the mandates and the lockdown. So she was pro the injections. What was she? She wasn't pro the mandates.
She plays a nuanced view. She
Right.
always plays the low key, nuanced. Everybody's got to make their own decisions, but at the end of the day, she was with the part of the agenda that mattered, which was injecting things into people's
Okay.
arms.
And
But she did do an interview with Pastor Nico House, and what I was meant to say is that she claimed that she only did a 3 to 4 year term at the Council on Foreign Relations, so she admitted that she was counsel on foreign relations because she couldn't get away with it anymore.
right.
And she went and she did a whole thing saying, "Oh yeah, they asked me, so I did." Blah de blah de blah. That is like that. If your credibility line is high and it's up here, once you admit to being counsel on relations, whether you like it or not, your credibility goes down here.
Okay. So I'm curious about this argument, controlled opposition, and I've never really entertained it or looked into it and stuff, right? So, I do have some questions and counterpoints. Um, so Jeremy Corbyn he was in favor of the injections, in favor of lockdown, but he was opposed to mandates. And then his Chris Williamson, who supported him a lot in the UK when he was also an MP, I've interviewed him, and I said to him, I said, look, the left failed when it came to the lockdowns, completely failed. And he acknowledged that,
They didn't
because,
fail; they were complicit.
well, yes.
That
Well,
it's
what I
more
said
than
was
failing.
you
It's
didn't
when they're
represent
meant to.
liberty.
It's the moment they're meant to represent. The most
Yeah, they
important.
didn't. They absolutely didn't, right? He acknowledged that. He said, we were wrong on that count because I said, look, who suffered the worst were the poor, in 10-story, some single parent family and with 3 kids on the 10th floor of a high-rise flat. I'm all right as a middle-class twit with my semi-detached house with a garden and everything, right? He acknowledged that. Um, and then could it not be that people make genuine, authentic errors or they change their mind? Because one of the things people have said about Tulsi is, she was in the WF Global Young Leaders Program. And what she said about that is they just used my photo and I just got invited along. I didn't know what it was. And when I realized, I left. And Putin's, wasn't part of the Global Leaders Program.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then, but
but it's a CIA. It's originally from CIA roots. So I mean,
WEF.
Yeah, the young global leaders. I mean, I've done loads of work on this in the Schwab articles. Schwab himself was trained under Kissinger at Harvard in Kissinger's international seminar, which was a precursor to Global Leaders for Tomorrow, which was a precursor to the Young Global Leaders program. They also go through programs such as the International Visitors Leadership Program and other leadership programs that come out of policy institutes that were set up by intelligence agencies, and they're recruitment grounds for intelligence agencies. And they can say, I mean, when she says, "Oh, they just offered me CFR, just offered me to for one term, so I went." Oh, they just WEF just offered me to look at some stuff, so I looked at some stuff, and then they just used my photo. When she says multiple things like that, it's like you got to think of her when she's 70. Imagine her if she's not attractive. I know this is really base. If she's not attractive, you're not for her, you're not on her side, you don't see her as one of your trusted group that you look for their opinion. If you just look at her as someone who potentially, I think about it in like, oh, if they were repulsive, would I still agree with them? And if they were repulsive and they went to CFR and they went to the WEF and they followed all these lines and they were in the military fighting in one of the most unjust wars, there's a point where you just got to stop and be like, okay, well, I don't trust it. It sniffs. It sniffs in multiple places. And if it was a massive, grotesquely Cyril Smith looking man, I would go, what a total and utter bastard. So
Sure. There is that, right? But there are others that are said to be controlled opposition. RFK, not bad looking for a 70-year-old, fit, right, muscular, much better than the previous,
steroids.
much, much better looking than Biden's health secretary, right? And who was a man in a dress, and Kash Patel. Okay, he's young, but he's not prepossessing. Are they also controlled opposition?
I would believe so. I believe if you've been put into a position of power at this stage, you are in the pocket in some way. They keep some people detached. They welcome in some people later on. Some of these people, a career. They want to get to a point of really good power, wealth, etc. When to get there, they're pouring on a glass and they can't get in, and no one's inviting them in. They got to be invited in, and no one's inviting them in. And then when they get invited in, we go, oh, at least they're good because they've not been in so far. But they've been pouring at the window the entire time, desperate. I mean, Kash Patel is basically a businessman banker, isn't he? Something along those lines. He was doing a lot of financial stuff, if I remember correctly. And you said something earlier. You were talking about Jeremy Corbyn.
Mm,
The one thing that's really important to understand about controlled opposition, you don't have to knowingly agree with being controlled opposition to be controlled opposition. You can, yeah, I know. There's a big nuance to it. So Jeremy Corbyn we know from his tenure, we've seen where it went. He got put in unexpectedly. The whole third way part of the Labour Party turned on him.
mm,
They used it as an excuse to purge the left. They made him into the massive like evil criminal mastermind, political mastermind or something, and it was just ridiculous. He's just like a relatively quiet old man. And if you look at how he got selected, it was all of the people who would turn against him who selected him, put him up, gave him the potential, and then everybody pushed the supporters to there simply from all of their actions beforehand. From the moment Tony Blair took charge to the moment that it was Ed Miliband and Ed Balls, they realized that Labour Party had used all of its political collateral on all of the bad decisions that were made through all of that time. No one trusted them anymore. Cameron was in. He had moved to the centre, been brought to the centre by Blair's third way politics. So suddenly it was hard to compete again. It was easy to beat the right when they were further right. But as soon
Mm.
as they did the same as you and purged their party and they move into the centre, oh, it's harder to do it because they look even more professional. Ed Miliband and Ed Balls were looking like flustered and didn't know what to do most of the time. They looked like they were in disarray, and they were made to look like that as well. So it got to a point where they were losing so much. They lost Scotland in such a dramatic way that everybody said they may never gain power again. We were saying that back then. We were saying Labour's a spent force, blah de blah. Counting your chickens before they hatch, and believing that these guys, this political entity, has killed itself because of Blairism, Brownism, etc., etc. But in actual fact, what they did is they said, okay, let's look at this from a PR point of view. People despise us, and we've got to become the hero again. So we need to create an enemy and manufacture an enemy, someone who's not going to agree with it, because they're actually going to be our enemy. Who fits that bill? And you can look. Chris Williamson fits that bill. Jeremy Corbyn fits that bill. A few others, say maybe 6, 7 others. The best one, the best possible, would be probably Chris Williamson and Jeremy Corbyn to choose to put up as leader, to be like, oh yeah, we're just putting him up so we got some sort of opposition. That's what they said. It was bullshit. Bull. You don't, in important political decisions, you don't put up some person you don't agree with just for the fact that, oh, you can make it fair. What, you believe that these new Labour type were actually caring about how democracy worked and how the party was run and it all being fair? They just want power. So what they did is they lifted up Corbyn, and he was going to be the thing to beat. For the next few years, they can gain credibility by saying, that's the problem there. It's not us and all our bad policies. It's not Blair's rule. It's not Brown's rule. It's not Ed Miliband and Ed Ball's rule. No, it's all being Corbyn, and we need to crucify him. We need to put him up on the cross, and we need to watch him die, and we need to salivate, and it will bring us back to power again. It's like a sacrificial lamb. And all of the people who surrounded him, all of the two people who I would say were closest to Corbyn during his time that we're in the Labour Party, was Keir Starmer, the stalking horse, who was intelligence linked from all of the way back, was joining the Trilateral Commission secretly behind Corbyn's back while he was deputy PM, was chosen because he was the figure that all of the rest of the party would accept as somehow manipulating and controlling, and he would sit there and have a legal view inside with Corbyn and make it impossible for him to move. Starmer wrapped Corbyn up completely because he could not be a danger. The plan is simple. We're going to use this guy as a scapegoat. We're going to burn him at the altar, and then we're going to become a political force again. And that's what we've seen with Labour. Purge the left, purge the left. Again, third way politics. Purge, 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 purge. Bring it more to the centre. Bring it more to the centre.
Yeah, that definitely fits. I joined the Labour Party in order to support Corbyn, and as soon as he was ousted by this
Yeah.
Blairite coup led by Starmer, I left. And then I know that Starmer then used all those that supported Corbyn on that spurious false charge of him being anti-Semitic. Okay, we'll get rid
Unbelievable.
of. So they got rid of all of his supporters,
Purge, purge,
locally
purge.
and centrally, and then they were then able to uh, send these blow-ins from central office to who are Starmerite clones for all these red wall seats. And one of the things that I noticed, and I said this in my videos, I said Rishi Sunak's going to do such an awful job, deliberately awful job, that he's going to hand Starmer an unassailable majority. And Starmer, there's nothing appealing about him, nothing whatsoever. And he's turned out to be even worse than he
Yeah.
was in opposition, right? So, and they have this unassailable majority. So I get all that. And then what you're saying about Jeremy Corbyn and Tulsi Gabbard, as controlled opposition. It's slightly different, like from my understanding of what you said, that Tulsi Gabbard was, in a way, kind of knew that she was because she was connected to the other side.
She's working for the other side in
She's
my
working for the other side,
she's
right?
working for the other side and pretending to be something else, in my opinion.
Yeah. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn wasn't working for the other side, for the globalists, but the globalists shored him up
You
anyway.
don't have to agree to be controlled opposition. You
Right,
don't have
right.
to agree. And that's the big misconception. Everybody thinks, you know, it is, there's, again, these are logical fallacies. I just rail on logical fallacies. And, you know, some logical fallacies are so nuanced that I don't know them. And even people who study logical fallacies don't know them. But it speaks to innocence, why we look at people and think, if they're doing something wrong, they must be evil. It's not always the case. It's very much that 75% of the time, evil is done by evil people, and 25% of the time, it's done by well-meaning people. Um,
Hmm.
I don't even think that these guys have been brought up in circles that lead them to believe that this is what they need to do to keep control and power. So it's just these are just political games.
Okay.
And it comes down to a fact that eventually we've all just got to realize that there's no more heroes. I keep saying this as well. You know, no more heroes. There's no putting our eggs in that one basket. We've learned over and over again that what we got is a bunch of people, politicians in the world at the moment who are they're just distasteful, horrible people. And when we see something nice rise up, we're just so desperate for it and we grab onto it and we put all of our belief in it. And it's really simplistic. It makes me think, like, politically, for political perception, we are infants on the whole. On the
Hmm.
majority, we are infantile and we are doing the same mistakes that are so obvious and we should be able to see.
Yeah.
And I think, again, you talk about Chris Williamson. I have an enormous amount of respect for Chris Williamson because of this point. When
Hmm.
I'm looking at them, I'm looking at all of these people and I'm like in disgust. And then there's this one guy in amongst it who's fighting away, who's doing stuff that seems just like he's trying to prove what we all know to be so. And I now know it was so, and I'm watching him trying to unveil it. And for me, that would make me go, "Oh my God, he's trustworthy. I can trust him." And then I look at him now, and he's still standing up for the side that I believe is probably the right side, you know, the weak, the poor. And I go, that guy is amazing. I see his trajectory, and in my esteem, he goes up like this and continues to go up like this. Tulsi Gabbard, that same sort of like thing happens, but it's about intelligence. She is in the military. Root could be intelligence. She's not there yet. She goes into politics. She joins all of these different organizations that are intelligence linked. She gets all of these different accolades that are intelligence linked. She's heading up the intelligence ladder. She gets the highest office of intelligence in the land. Like with Chris Williamson being a good person, and you see it play out, and you would think if someone was a good person, they would start here and end here on these issues that I believe in personally. Whether anybody else does doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Then, and you see that play out, you say, okay, he's probably a good person then. But with you see someone constantly head towards becoming the head of intelligence in America, don't put your don't put your eggs in that basket. A basket, stinky basket.
Right, right. Okay. Okay. So a few points on what you said. So um and just Tulsi Gabbard, I think there's a play in the future. At some point she's going to go for being president of the United States. That she's
Oh
on
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
trajectory
yeah.
there.
You are right. You are really astute to notice.
And
Really
and then the thing about being taken in by someone who just comes in like a breath of fresh air, that happened to me with Barack Obama, because George W. Bush was so awful, the slaughter in Iraq, and then one of the things that was very curious about Obama is he came out of nowhere. This senator came out of nowhere, smart, articulate. Yes, we can. And did he
Now the
help?
CFR.
No, he didn't, right? And then later on discuss getting, excuse me, getting that I was taken in by a smooth talking mass murderer. Same thing happened with Tony Blair. And there was, a bit of suspicion around the death of David Smith, the previous leader of the Labour Party.
John Smith, but yeah.
John Smith, sorry, thank you for correcting me. And then David Smith comes, sorry, Tony Blair comes. I don't know what David is, right?
You're
Sorry about,
with
sorry
Dave.
that I haven't called you David so far,
You
Johnny.
could do it. You
David,
David Smith me if you want.
David Smith, Johnny Vedmore, David Vedmore. Anyway, Tony Blair comes in sort of like out of the blue as well, right? And okay, so I get that. And then also that, Joe Biden's been so awful. Trump was anti-war. I don't want to talk about Trump yet. He was anti-war. Can we please have, okay, fine, he's an orange buffoon or whatever, but he's anti-war. That'll do for me. Can we just stop the killing? Just that, right? Now, I want to go back to, we will come to Trump, I'm sure, right? I want to go back to Starmer. Because I think you've dug into Starmer a whole lot more than I have, because that's what you're excellent at, and which is why people should follow Johnny Vedmore on X and all his other platforms, right? Just fabulous, fabulous investigative work, really, really thorough. The kind of detail that I'm not great at. I'm great at putting things together and bigger ideas, right? He's MI6. I know that. I've come across that. And as a kid, he knew Jimmy Savile. And then he's done all these things as the head of the CPS, like turning a blind eye to the Pakistani rape gangs. And I use that phrase deliberately, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, those were crimes of class, crimes of sex, and crimes of race.
Mm-hmm.
Those Pakistani men thought nothing of those white girls, and a pox on all their houses for doing that.
Same as the elites.
Sorry?
The elites thought nothing of those white girls either.
Absolutely, because that's the other thing that I've said on some of my videos, right? Is that why it didn't get taken apart and why it was allowed to persist is because those girls were being fed. You pull on a string and it goes all the way to the top. And then Keir Starmer gave Jimmy Savile a pass.
Mm-hmm.
He gave Mohammed Al-Fayed a pass.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us some things about Keir Starmer. And he was set up. The WF owned Sunak. I could see that. And they own Starmer when he was in
Yeah.
operation. They own him now.
Well, I think you say you've spoken to a lot of it. I'm not sure, right? I'll be quite fair. I'm not sure so much about he knew Jimmy Savile when he was a kid. There's a picture of him, but there's a picture of most kids next to Jimmy Savile.
I didn't get to sit next to Jimmy Savile.
No. But it was always when I was young. It was
I remember
always
the Jim will fix it show.
2 degrees of separation between myself and people like Jimmy Savile because lots of my friends went to we were too busy running around in 17th century clothing doing the sealed knot stuff in my family, so we didn't have the chance to go to fetes and fairs that were Jimmy Savile would be at. He wouldn't be at these things because the center of attention wouldn't be on him. He'd be pounding the old grey track with across the ley lines of the UK. But like there was a guy in my who used to come in the hotel when I worked in one hotel. I was night manager at the Holiday Inn in Cardiff, underneath the Millennium Stadium, and that was a wild place at times. And a guy called Mo used to. There was an Irish bar underneath it, and a guy called Mo used to come in every day after work, have a couple of pints or more. He was one of the regulars. And he'd come in the hotel afterwards and he'd order his taxi and he'd sit there in the chair and he'd tell you a story about Jimmy Savile every single time. It was really, really like, oh, he came running into the hotel and we saw him and, it was all really exciting. It was, people loved these people.
Jimmy Savile was well loved by a
Yeah.
portion of the population.
What were we on? Because I'm doing research about Jimmy Savile at the moment. I'm finding some really interesting stuff. Oh, Keir Starmer. The fact that the idea that he knew him, I don't know about that. It is true that there might be something there because there's always something there. And Keir Starmer's dirty and rotten. It does seem like he was forced out of some country because they thought he was MI6. I think it was Czechoslovakia back in the day. before the separation. And then when he got involved with the CPS, listen, you don't come to the top jobs in the Crown Prosecution Service without without having a few friends in high places. These are all signs of someone who is treading the path, treading the path of, especially when it comes to intelligence, because it's about being in control of the courts. That's one of the most important things. Intelligence assets and intelligence agencies have to get away with their crimes too. And there's only one way to do that, is to corrupt things. And we see some of there's two interesting things in the late noughties. His decision not to prosecute Jimmy Savile, or at least the department's decision while he's head of it, and Assange, like handing over information to the Americans and stuff and working with them completely compliantly. For me, I didn't see him come politically. He's your perfect modern bureaucrat, technocrat. He molds into whatever you want him to be,
Yeah.
at any time. The fact that he was next to Corbyn made me really. At first, I thought he was a bit of a hero. He must be. He's next to Corbyn, and Corbyn's a hero. And simplistic. But I started to get the gist that there was something else there. Now, during this time, he joined the Trilateral Commission behind Corbyn's back. And that's like a really nefarious Rockefeller originally organization, which is like one of the deep state programs. He just sniffs a deep state. Again, there's a trajectory.
Tell us a bit about the Trilateral Commission.
So the Trilateral Commission, I think it was set up by David Rockefeller, and I can't remember who the other person is. But again, these things, like they're steering committees, really, for decisions that are made mainly in different parts. So Bilderberg will be a steering committee for one thing. Trilateral Commission will be a steering committee and policy group for other things, and then the World Economic Forum's policy group for another thing, Aspen Institute, CFR, they all deal in different areas. And the Trilateral Commission, it seems to be more the intelligence link. During the early 70s, is a really important point in history that people need to know. Late 60s, about 1967, something really big happened. Something that I didn't know unless I looked into it properly. There was a magazine, a beautiful magazine, I love it, called Ramparts magazine in America. And it would investigate intelligence programs. It was investigating the CIA. It was actually investigating. Amazing. And in 1967, they discovered all of the different people who worked for the CIA. And it was all of these groups that all had claimed to be separate entities and had been independent. Everybody. Kissinger's International Seminar got outed. Gloria Steinem, working for the CIA for years, doing Soviet propaganda stuff, got outed and then becoming the main feminist leader in America. That got outed. There was loads of other outings going on. And they literally, International Seminar closed down. All of these people had to reform and do something different. The whole deep state was in chaos all of a sudden. And in the early 70s, they said, well, we've just got to be more balls out and detach ourselves by proxy, by creating proxies. And that's what they did. One of the best ways to look at this is I wrote an article called the German Marshall Fund, Guido Goldman and the German Marshall Fund. And the German Marshall Fund was it was set up to look like a policy institute, headed up by a guy called Guido Goldman. And on the opening ceremony is all of the members of the Council of Foreign Relations are there. David Rockefeller's there. This is around the time, I think, the Trilateral Commission is being created and the World Economic Forum is being created and a load of other CIA programs are coming to fruition and creating these arms that are separated. And they're realizing they need to be more balls out. There's these wonderful pictures of the German Marshall Fund, which is a CIA outfit. It's the thing that run Hamilton 68, was being run by the Neocons out of German Marshall Fund, Alliance for Secure Democracy. was there censoring the people. They're very, very involved in the intelligence community. And when their opening ceremony in 1973 at Harvard, they're all standing around. It's funded by the German government for American intelligence to create NGOs and other alternative proxy arms in Eastern Europe. All of the people standing around are all David Rockefeller and the boys. It is like the mafia deep state photographs. It's the McCloy and all of the people who have had such a massive impact on our histories. And from that point on, they were like balls out. These David Rockefeller, sort of the Rockefellers especially, I mean, he was just nefarious. He had his fingers in almost every pie. And these guys were creating our society. By the early 80s, these guys had adopted neocon strategies to be able to set up organizations such as USAID, which is being talked about all over the place at the moment. You know, well, come late to the party. It's been openly talking about its work with the CIA. Loads of different parts of this infrastructure got set up during the late 70s, early 80s. This was a new thing as well. This is really important to understand. I'm sorry if I'm
No,
telling
please carry
stories
on.
too long. Once they got their balls out, once Deep State got their balls out, they were like, okay, we need to change our strategy. We no longer can do this subversive CIA stuff. It's going to be found out. So instead, the CIA's got to fund these organizations through different arms. And what we have to do is then offset the workload we need for spying to these organizations and let them then create non-NGOs. So a lot of these were called non-governmental development organizations. They're the things that create non-governmental organizations. The development organizations create them. And they handed this over to the neocons in the late 60s and early 70s. At the same time as all of this turmoil, they were looking for solutions. And the neocons were coming around. Irving Kristol, the grandfather of neoconservatism, was coming along with his support for, you know, they believe in, they're like left wing, that believe that war hawks. You know, they believe that instability in the enemy and war, they're the perfect vehicle for spreading perpetual limited warfare, which was how to adopt Kissinger's methods afterwards and continue to create this sort of violence. Now, at the same time, I'm writing about this at the moment, so you're getting a sneak peek here. At the same time as Irving Kristol is and his gang are developing these neocon tentacles all over the place and are doing the things that the establishment before had to hide, but are doing them openly and balls out and are so disconnected from government that no one can do anything about it, and they fly under any sort of regulatory Senate oversight or anything like that. What they're creating they're so being so effective, but they're training straight away. 70s, 80s, they start to bring people on. One of the people they brought on was at Stanford University. No, it was a man called Peter Thiel, and he had just gone to Stanford University, and Stanford they obviously had noted him beforehand. I mean, it's not a surprise they noted him. His father was notable. His father had done work in the States, had studied in the States beforehand. I found him in newspaper archives doing that. And Peter Thiel goes to Stanford, and Irving Kristol, the grandfather of neoconservatism, helps fund the Stanford Review that Peter Thiel will become head of. And within it, then Peter Thiel will start like this neoconservative destabilization process amongst the academics and the technocrats from that moment. From the moment you see debates happening where he's causing friction and he's learning how to harness the kind of, because this is what I talked about with Doc Malik at one point, was it comes from permanent revolution.
Mhm.
This is the theory within Marxism that is like, and has been adopted in different ways by different Russian leaders, that you need a permanent revolution to be happening, to be properly Marxist. And neoconservatives are really the proponent of a permanent revolution within a democratic sense, see the uses for it, and it's been very successful. So our creation of our world right now is by neocons, a lot of neocons, and they can flip whatever side, they can take whatever face, they can happily pretend to be whatever person. They're the intelligence infrastructure manifesting in political form on the left wing, and they can then, when the right takes over, just flip over to the right, and that's what they keep doing. They just like move between the two, and they keep in power. So I think that's like one of the most like really interesting things that I've been learning recently about Peter Thiel's like neoconservative rise. It's very interesting.
Wow. Bloody hell, Johnny.
Mm.
Bloody hell. Take a breath, mate. That
Yeah.
was quite something.
So
Jeez. Okay. No, nothing to apologize for. It's just fascinating. And I'm not agreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. One of the things I do as a social worker is, I'm looking at an issue from all sorts of perspectives, all sorts of angles, and then looking for coherence between those different angles or whatever, and then seeing how it plays out. So bringing that model of analysis, because that's what I do and I'm good at, right? So please don't take anything I say as disagreement. I'm curious and digging in, and there's
me
something from
too. I
each other.
haven't made my mind up on any of it to an
Yeah,
extent. I'm
because
always.
also at some point, either of us or both of us, we're going to come across something new, which is like, oh, okay, that changes everything, right? Yes. Okay. Now, Peter Thiel, because there's so many directions to go, is, and we haven't finished Keir Starmer or MI6, have we? Or is there more?
Well, I think after he joined the Trilateral Commission, that he was on the path to leadership. So he'd already proved himself as being what is really a consummate professional. The Keir Starmer, you may hate him and stuff, but he is fantastic at what he does, and what he does is for the deep state. So
He
he's
does their bidding. He
yeah,
does
he
their
does a
bidding.
bit.
Right.
He is.
He does
I
their
mean,
bidding.
he's a representative of intelligence leading the country, and
Yeah.
and
And
he is following in he's still doing the purges and the third way nonsense. So they're heading towards globalism, and that's what they're doing, is signing our country away while they're in
yeah,
power.
absolutely. I mean, all these policies are just horrific for Britons and great for the globalists. And the WF and the Great Reset still full.
And the Rockefeller Institute has been built up. Those are all like kind of Rockefeller.
Right. Okay. And one thing I wonder about is what must it be like for him in his own skin, given the amount of vitriol and hatred? He must be a dead man
Yeah,
inside.
narcissists
So
don't care,
insane.
though. I mean, this is the thing: is as empathic people ask that question. There, empathic people ask, "I don't understand how he could live within his skin." Narcissists don't ask that question at all.
Well, I've betrayed myself as one of these social worker
You're
empath
a
types.
sweetie. You're a sweetheart. Mate. You're a sweetheart. That's what you are. That's what they say in the West Midlands.
Okay, I don't know whether to go with the Pakistani rape gangs or Palantir and his connection with JD Vance. Where do you want to go, Johnny?
Oh, any way you want. I mean, there's not much. It, it seems that JD Vance is pretty much a construct. He's been parachuted in 2021. He becomes um, uh, he gets into politics, and 2024 he's the pick for the vice presidency, and it's a Teal guy, and it seems to be really quickly parachuted in political terms. That's craziness. So
Yeah, like an Anglo-American Barack Obama, a blow in, successful at whatever he's doing, articulate. He hasn't got a man as his wife. He's got an Indian woman as his wife.
Yeah, yeah. Don't believe there's not some guy hanging around. Anyway, he gets on his knees for Thiel, most likely. I mean, he has multiple links to Peter Thiel. So, I mean, again, military service, and then hanging around in the biggest intelligence tech company.
Talented.
There's a trajectory up to vice president, intelligence, 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 intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard, intelligence, 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 intelligence. There's a trajectory to power because power is about being part of the national security state.
Okay, so then could this be one way of looking at it as a heuristic? So we had Rishi Sunak doing a really awful job, giving rise to Starmer. We had Joe Biden doing a really awful job, pedo Biden, sorry, doing a really awful job, giving Trump this massive majority, certainly in polling numbers, not necessarily in number of senators and stuff, but sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trump has got JD Vance as his second, Peter Thiel. He's got Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Kash Patel, Besant, the other people, Musk. Tell us about them.
Okay, so RFK Jr. loads of intelligence links all throughout his life. In again, he's another one who imagine you don't have to. I say this again. You don't have to know or agree with the fact that you're a manufactured persona in political for political expedience in some area or another. You don't have to know or agree or anything like that. You can be forced into it. You can watch your uncle get shot on live TV after the wonder of getting to go around the White House and do all of this and feel like you're a special family, and then you get to see his head blown out, and then 5 years later you get to see the same happen to your dad. Your dad gets shot, and then you go through this point where you have to make decisions in your life whether you're gonna be that really outspoken critic of the of politics, or whether you're gonna heal. Because I think a lot of that family had to afterwards, because the thought that you'd want to continue being like in any type of political revolution against a deep state establishment that's openly murdering your family, then you're just not going to, in my opinion. That's my opinion. By the time he gets to university, he of course goes to Harvard. He's at the center of all of this power. This is when all of these Rockefeller-funded programs are going on. When the German Marshall Fund is rocking around there, and other things like that. And he takes a year out. It's a really weird year out. He takes a year out at one point. A guy comes to him, Roger Ailes, who's the head of who was later the head of Fox News. So right-leaning, always had Republic affiliation, comes to RFK a year into his university and says, come with me and we'll film a documentary about hawking and falconry. And nothing comes of it. They go and they disappear. I've not been able to find a documentary. I know Fox Green is looking for the documentary as well. And it seems like, from my experience of investigating people within the deep state, it's this moment when you're in the center of your university career is that they get you. And that's when they come for you. After that, he works as an environmental lawyer. Now, understand that this establishment in Harvard is hanging around with all the Morris Strong guys, the Malthusians of the different organizations like the Club of Rome, are all hanging around in these groups. And they're all speaking about, openly, publicly speaking about how they can use environmentalism as a way to force population control upon people. Whether that is anything to do with the direction of assets, RFK Jr. became an environmental lawyer set up Riverkeeper and other organizations, and fought against the big powers. But that is, they only put up people to fight against the rich people. They only put up people who are controllable. So that would also suggest he also goes through a lot of drug addiction. Then comes the links with a lot of people. He's got lots of links all throughout his life. People want to be close to him. Ghislaine Maxwell was trying to get close to the Kennedy family, regardless. She wanted to marry JFK Jr. She slept with him once, and afterwards, he looks like he blanked her to a large degree. And Ghislaine Maxwell was buzzing around there. Robert Maxwell wanted to merge his family and create his family legacy, push up a level, and believed like merging the Maxwell family with the Kennedy family would be a really good suit because they're quite low down but both high up family that could maybe go up to the next level by merging. So Ghislaine Maxwell was buzzing around there. So it's not a surprise that he starts hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein. And he starts hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, for sure. You would think if he's hanging around in New York, they're probably within the same circles from the late 80s anyway. Those circles are very small, even though New York's a massive place. The richest bars with the wealthiest people and all of the big bankers, those are few and far between back then still anyway, and times are booming. Lots of operations happening. All of these people are working in intelligence. We know that Jeffrey Epstein's working on Iran-Contra from 1980, so he's involved in CIA stuff very early on. And it's not until 1987 that he meets, or 86, 87, that he meets Les Wexner, and then afterwards Robert Maxwell and Ghislaine Maxwell, of course. But Epstein is flying around in these circles. RFK Jr. is then, the first note of it officially is the flight logs in 1994. That's where RFK Jr.'s lied publicly. He said that he only caught the Lolita Express twice, once on his own without Epstein as a favor, and once to go fossil hunting. In actual fact, you can find a picture of that time where he's at an event sitting on the same table as Epstein. So we know that he's not told the truth fully there. And it was a 4-day sort of trip, 5-day trip, something like that, backwards and forwards, that he was on the Lolita Express that time. Then the gardener, Juan Alessi, when all of the stuff was happening, he was questioned by authorities and by the media, said that RFK Jr. and Donald Trump were around El Brillo Way on occasion. And El Brillo Way was the house of hell. I mean, that was where really the majority.
Where was that? Where was El Brillo?
358 El Brillo Way is in Palm Beach. It's in Florida. It's his Florida house of hell. The future Epstein, one of the victims' lawyers, lives 500 meters away from him, just across Stanley Pottinger, just across is there. The house was built by George Huntington Hartford, who in the Black Hand series I call the original Jeffrey Epstein. It wasn't built. It was designed by the same person who designed all George Huntington Hartford's Paradise Island. George Huntington Hartford was very much like Epstein, had lots of intelligence linked, had his own little Paradise Island where he flew people out and they had sex parties with young girls. He liked them prime, just like Epstein and the stuff. These people repeat within history. But RFK Jr. is hanging around with these people all the time. Is during this period, if you want to see what evidence there is what type of person he was or character, well, his wife was having a load of troubles. She had basically become an alcoholic. He was noting down his 37 affairs that he was having on his wife and rating them in his notepad that got picked up by loads of people later. He was doing naughty things. Then he would split with his wife, and his wife would be found hanging in a barn. They would bury her, and then they would dig up the body and move it to an undisclosed location afterwards. I just don't think that's normal. There's loads of other signs of evidence. I mean, one of his campaign managers and stepdaughter, maybe she is as well. was CIA in the past. His son's working operations over in Ukraine. It all seems like intelligence links all over the place for survival. To do RFK wants to survive. Elon Musk, he's around a load of different people throughout his career. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, people like this, they are noted in loads of different potential young leadership programs that run out of university. And when you get really noted, the dean will call his mate from his old Harvard or Yale days and say, okay, these are the guys and candidates we put forward. There's letters from Guido Goldman, who was the head of the GMF, while he was uh, doing a function in the CFR, writing and having letters written to him about selection of candidates for the CFR. And that's one of the things university deans do as well. They say, oh, maybe you should go to the CFR, or maybe you should go to this. That's what happened to Kissinger. Kissinger wanted to join the FBI in 1950 when he left Harvard. And they said, oh, no, I tell you what, you should go to the CFR. I think it was George McBundy who said, McGeorge Bundy, sorry, his name. So the same RFK, the same Elon Musk. You follow his route. He's at some point he becomes linked with Thiel, and Thiel is a lot more savvy and well ahead of him on the intelligence links by this point. And I wonder whether or not, what come first, chicken or the egg? Are they equal, or did one bring the other on board? And in the late 90s, early noughties, you've got all of the PayPal stuff going on. That's when they first create X.com. They see it as the platform of the future, but they're going to go back to it once it gets to the future. Then Elon Musk kind of like becomes the poster boy for technology, space age, and his whole identity is reformed over about a 5-6 year period. He comes out the other side as the Elon Musk we know today, which is very much a PR construct by his mum to an extent. He's a multifaceted construct. He has many different faces, but his mum was really good at marketing. And then, as I've revealed in Epstein Musk, the third culture, he was trained through things like Edge Foundation. So Epstein funded training on how to control people's behavior by using behavioral economics on a mass scale in social medias. Only the top people attended those courses, like 10 to 15 people, included Jeff Bezos and people, the people who were going to these courses were the heads of YouTube, the heads of Google, the heads of Facebook, the heads of Spotify, their heads, people like Elon Musk. They're the top guys designing society with the idea that we're already a meritocracy, that we're already past the point of elections being anything. They're designing our society for us. So I see all of these guys within the same realm. I think the center in America, this Democratic Party, has been brought more central. Republican Party has been brought more as central as the Democratic Party because Bill Clinton enacted third way politics, and they basically held on to the center ground, and now it's indistinguishable from each other. Most of them are ex-Democrats who are Republican now. That can only happen if the parties are extremely close, politically aligned.
Well, that's to do with RFK and Gabbard and Trump. They were all Democrats beforehand.
That's a national security state. That's a national, and all of them have links to. They all have this trajectory. They're recruited here. They got their training. They're working on all of the major projects, and then at the top of we're already a meritocracy. We're already a technocratic meritocracy.
Okay, now you mentioned Trump and Epstein, their connections. So let's move to Trump then, right? So where does he fit in? Is he controlled opposition?
Again, you don't need to. Trump is he's amazing. He's surfing the storm. He He's like that guy who, it does not matter. His level of ethics and his level of narcissism is so correctly aligned that he can just surf through everything. He's gaining. It doesn't matter. Whatever goes goes. Trump was brought up and mentored by people like Roy Cohn. I mean, these are serious people that he was mentored by. He was hanging around in really nefarious circles. This is during the time of the New York banking scene back in the time. These are all gangsters who ended up going to be intelligence assets. He was always seen as someone, he was so rich that he was always seen as a player, and he continued to be a player all throughout his life. He was savvy, has always been savvy, knows one thing better than anything else. PR is all about his image. So his ego is reflected in the control he has over his image. And when we see how he uh, responded to Epstein, perfect example of that. He banned Epstein from his resorts. That was a really slick move by someone who's got all of the information. So he knew what was coming very early on. It was, I can't remember if it was, I think it was about 2002, maybe 2003 that happened. But it's only 2004, 5, 6 that the Epstein ball really started rolling, and everybody started to hear that he was being investigated, and then he was being prosecuted. So it's like before that, he was, most people could wine and dine with him and not worry too much about the consequences because nobody was watching. As soon as it became clear that they were all in trouble and he was going to be outed in some way, certain people ran from him quickly, and one of them was Trump. Very clever mover, very,
And
very.
did Trump have ties with Epstein beforehand? And
Yeah. He was one of the ones who was around Epstein's house on. I don't know how many times he flew on the Lolita Express a few times.
that was just, he said that was just domestic flights. He didn't go to the
Yeah, but
island.
loads of but I mean, even if it was domestic flights, his house is like his number one place of evil. Jeffrey Epstein was domestically. It was in Florida. His
Right.
he was running girls for himself in having girls run underage girls to all of his homes in America. The majority of the stuff he would bring the carefully selected and curated helpers, would say, to his other destination. So they were the top girls, like, in that sense. But the majority of the girls that he abused were brought in by these top level players in his organization to him and were separate and outside. But they would have been all around. You would have noticed them coming in and out and what was going on. You would have.
Okay. Okay. Johnny, I don't want it to be true, right? Because I'd like there to be some goodies, right? Some salvation in this whole drama that's unfolding, right? But on the other hand, as a child protection social worker, nothing surprises me.
Mhm.
Right? It's just human beings, right? We're all a mixture of virtue and vice. And okay, here's another one.
Yeah.
Now, why did the intelligence service or whoever, if Epstein was such an important asset, why did he get exposed and investigated? And the same with Ghislaine Maxwell.
I think it comes down to political expedience. Must be. It's something that needed to be done for political reason. I would assume that the real reason is because of how important and how his connections were from 1991 onwards with Democratic presidential candidates. Epstein was becoming, he was training basically and co-opting potential leadership candidates for the Democrats on behalf of the Democrats. Not only was he funding them, but and courting them in many different ways, but he was flying them around. He was meeting them, and he was getting to know them. So all of the potential Democratic candidates of the past include people like, of course, Bill Clinton. He was around him a lot right at the start. I think this was when Bill Clinton welcomes Epstein into the White House in 1993. He does so over the next 2 years 17 times. Epstein arrives at the White House and they have loads of, they're not doing nothing there. What they're doing is planning the Democratic Party leadership of the future. They, to make sure that third way works, you can't have the next leader coming in and flipping the paradigm. That's not acceptable. The party has to have stability. So I think that was what Epstein was being used for. The people he was, Bill Richardson was one of the people. He was the governor of Texas and was a likely candidate if it hadn't been for all of the allegations of corruption he went through in different things through the 90s. He was seen early on as being a front runner. He had lots of associations with Bill Richardson. Joe Lieberman. Bill Richardson and Joe Lieberman both were potential picks for Gore's presidential for vice president. Joe Lieberman became the vice president. It was Gore or vice presidential candidate. It was a Gore-Lieberman ticket. Joe Lieberman is in loads of different senators in loads of different groups and elite, very elite parties, and he's always in the background. Very interesting player. Gets supported, has a bit of a closer relationship with Epstein. Epstein's meeting Gore, bringing him to the island. He's meeting RFK regularly. Donald Trump is a Democratic candidate potential for the future. John Kerry, he's funding John Kerry up until about 2002, I think it is. He's Epstein, and he's supporting him. So John Kerry's also one of the ones who went in against George Bush, of course. So there's lots of him supporting the future candidates, and that's what his job was. His function was he got to run loads of different operations and programs. He was a financier who was very good at financing intelligence operations, and the intelligence were taking over the government, and they needed to train new leaders of the future. And it's the same old trick round, and there's stages to that. There's not only the training they receive in establishments like Harvard through different programs or whatnot, or membership of Trilateral Commission or CFR, but it's also through these sort of functionaries, these people like Jeffrey Epstein, who will get you in line with what the intelligence wants. So I think he was a high-level CIA operative interlocutor. It includes a lot of work with Israel, which is part of the big grey intelligence blob. Corey Hughes says it really well. The Central Intelligence Agency is central to everything. So they've got their tentacles in every single pie. It's the other players who it's really interesting with Epstein, because he had such a large connection or obvious connection with Israel in many different ways. And so that's really interesting. But it's also used as a scapegoat to say, oh, he's just not bad. But this is what they were doing. It's a leadership route.
Which then brings us to the Epstein files and the JFK files and the RFK and MLK files. And plus all the exposures that are happening through USAID that Elon Musk is doing. If, Trump is saying he's going to release all of them, hopefully unredacted, then that's going to completely undermine the intelligence services, the CIA. People get, okay, underneath all of this, CIA, Mossad, and in the background, MI6 pulling strings from across the Atlantic. So why would he do that? Is he going to do that?
I really do think there's a lot to be said about permanent revolution, about the fact that works on all different types of ways. And when you expand that out, when you expand where the people like the neocons would take in our society, destabilization all over the place, no one knows what's real or not. That leads to fifth generation warfare and the ideas around psy wars and and no one knowing what's going on. And that's what how the technocrats see power being used in the future. So I think destabilization makes sense. People being in disarray makes sense. People not knowing who's on what side makes sense in that paradigm. And that's the paradigm that we're living in. But the problem is that when we try and think about it, and try and understand how it works, it's built to destabilize our minds. So,
Certainly doing that, right? But I think that might be you, Johnny, rather than them.
maybe.
You're destabilizing my mind.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You're not really
Sorry.
sorry, and I don't mind. All right,
I'm
it's
not
all
really
useful.
sorry.
I
I'm a
know.
bit.
Okay, but then okay, but it also fits I think. Well, I'm going to offer a different model. And a lot of this is from the conversations I've had with Tom Luongo and Alex Craner. All families, all groups are unstable. The larger they are, the more unstable they are, especially when they're losing. You know, brothers and sisters fall out with each other, a large family breaks into factions. You look at what's happening with the European Union. You know, Britain left the party and then they're falling out with Hungary and Germany. There's divisions inside, all of that. So, yes, that could also be permanent revolution, one way of looking at it. The other is, it's just how human beings naturally already always are, that
Mhm.
we break apart and then, you know, group A wants this result and group B wants
Amen.
this result, and there are odds with each other. And that maybe group B, like Musk and Trump and RFK and JD Vance and whoever, right? They've had revelations. They think, no, what Group A is doing is evil. We're going to offer a better alternative. And Group A is saying, no, Group B is evil. Don't believe them. And then maybe you, Johnny, are controlled opposition, and you are the ultimate MI6, CIA, Mossad, ISI,
Wish
raw
they pay me more.
KGB. Sorry,
I wish they
they
paid
should
me
pay you
more.
more, right?
Yeah.
FSB agent, all of them combined, right? A relic of the Stasi. That's where you were brought up, right? Brought up by them. That you're saying all this in order to undermine any support that people. Do you get
Mhm.
I'm saying? It's
But
what's going on?
what you're saying is a projection that the the permanent revolution, and this is something I've been thinking about recently when I've been thinking that when I've been considering the lilies. That permanent revolution, perpetual limited warfare, destabilization, war, all of these different things are projections of humanity. And I was talking about this with Doc Malik. You know, we're humans. He was like, "Oh, we love," and I was like, "We hate." And, you know, he's like, "Oh, we give," and it's like, we take.
Yeah,
You know,
kill
that's
people.
yeah, it's the way of things. And if we think that's going to be different in 50 years' time, or 100 years' time, or 200 or 500, we're really wrong, because when we're 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 trying to turn human nature into a movie that has a different ending, and it's not got the parts for that ending. Yeah, we're like we're putting Rowan Atkinson in a love story that isn't a comedy, you know, as Mr. Bean. It's not going to fit. We need the future is still going to be human, and
The
humans.
future is still going to be human.
Yeah, well, hopefully, and humans. This is okay. Okay, so maybe I should reform that. The future is probably still going to be human up until the point where humans do something stupid, which humans do stupid stuff daily, all of the time, and it's like 7 billion of us. So it's likely that we'll continue to do stupid stuff, and that will cause trouble, and we'll likely start to give our own responsibility and ownership further away from where it is right now, which is quite far away from us, and we'll start using the machines to blame. I find myself shouting at AI at times. I'm creating a quiz show called Truth Bomb. I recorded the first of it. It's going to be epic, epic. And I find myself shouting at things like AI, and then being like, "Oh, I'm allowed to. I can." it fosters the worst of human nature, and it encourages it. And you go, oh yeah, okay, I can shout at machines now. And then you turn around to a human, and you've got so used to shouting at and hating and being angry in life, and that's the way we are in general, humans. The more stress and pressure we have put on us, the more we offset and let off steam in a place which is, well, usually contains innocent people who don't deserve to take the stress. And that's in our everyday lives as well as our society. So, if we're having bad week after bad week, if we're in a bad job and we're living a unhealthy lifestyle and all these different things, we're taking it out on the people we're sitting next to.
Yeah,
This is the same with it on a bigger scale as well. We humans. Not going
we
to
are
change.
humans. And there's no cure for that except, and I'm not going to go there with you in this conversation.
Alcohol.
No, not
Oh,
alcohol. That's something else, but not alcohol, right?
drugs.
Without getting too woo-woo,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I'm actually really, really optimistic about the future for two reasons. One is all the woo-woo stuff, which I'm not going to talk about with you online, right? But the other is the forces of decentralization, because decentralized forces are really, really difficult to capture and control. Like
Yeah.
try and get rid of ants' nests. Go on, have a go. You just can't. Right.
Don't do this to me. Because yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree to an extent because decentralization becomes centralization when it is adopted by everybody. So, the idea that we're going to be decentralized, well, we need decentralized structures. Look how that's going. Okay. Um, Bitcoin. You can, I mean, you're a master of it. What, if I wanted to know who's got a Bitcoin wallet, could I?
No, I mean, it wouldn't be easy. You could go around locally chatting to local people. That would be a decentralized way. There's decentralized applications, there's decentralized social media, and
Mm.
that's growing and growing. Decentralized VPNs that aren't captured in any way, they're also growing
But
and
if
growing.
the input of those decentralized platforms are people who have been brainwashed throughout their entire life, believe a load of false paradigms, and they're projecting that out in decentralized world, there's no difference from that to that. It's
Yeah,
mindset
fair point.
all of the way. We can use platforms. We can create like something like a cryptocurrency. Imagine we just have one Imagine we just have Bitcoin. Imagine the next step is, we'll marry that to the dollar or whatever. Like there's some talk of. Then what's the next step along the lines? Well, just having digital currency, and then it's extrapolation and it's evolution. We can have decentralized systems, but technology will undermine advancing in technology will undermine all systems of the past, including systems we create now that are decentralized, and they will be replaced by something that humans, the majority of them, will find convenient. So those decentralized systems, if they were adopted by everyone, they would just be the system.
Mhm.
If they are undermined, they'll be undermined most likely by something that's extremely convenient for people, and that is possible. Decentralized systems are usually lacking in convenience. You have to go out of your way. You have to learn stuff. You have to do something different.
Yeah.
Humanity, again, gets given something on the plate and goes, the majority of them just accept what they're told. We know this from all different sectors of society, government, media, whatever. What you put in, what they put in, we remember and we say, oh, that's fact. That's what we've been told. That's how we live our lives. This is what we do. We only accept cash. We only accept these different things in life because we've been told we have to. And we've got no other way, an alternative.
Mm.
So at the
So
end
then,
of the
what
day,
would you say? What would you say? What's the solution? What do we need to be aware of? What actions should we take?
hate being solutions, man. I would say that there is we we have to change our perception of how we deal with these issues and problems. We're
Mm,
looking for permanent solutions when there is no permanence. Not in the passage of time, the arc, exponential increase in technology, the many factors, political, changing political factors, etc. They mean that we are driven towards the, the inevitable. And that's what these policy institutes, that's what all of these people of the past do. They try and work out what the inevitable looks like, and then they try and co opt it. We are all surfing along on that. The people who co opt the inevitable don't think about everything, and the inevitable keeps changing. And we got to change our perception of how we're in this journey. We're not in this journey where we should find permanence. We are on a ride, and we've got to understand what we can control and what we can't control. Because some of it is like, if you walk into a train station and you're on a train platform and it's completely full, it is pushing you forward, you're going to go forward. There is
mm,
nothing else you can do. You are just stuck in it. And that's how the majority of society works. That's how evolution happens on all levels, not only biological, but also technological. We are being pushed along. We have no control over it. And we've got to understand that the way to make it better would be to change our mindset of how we approach it and how we adopt it and how we adapt to it. For that, we have to have a better philosophical understanding and a more realistic understanding of. So we're talking about this and we're saying, oh, it's humans, it's humans, it's humans. Well, what does that mean? It means that you're not going to have your cake and eat it. So don't design the world to have your cake and eat it.
right,
And that's
right.
what they're doing. They're designing the world to have their cake and eat it. It's just not going to work. And then we're going to have to, we, the normal people on the ground, the people who are only peak life, not a child, actually intelligent and healthy, maybe 30 years, 30, 40 years of our existence was by in a flash. And then it's the next generation and the next generation. And no one's in control. They're all looking for control. They're all looking for a way, but it's humanity. We're on a ride. The past ancestors are the past. We're the right now, and the future is going to be something different. And we have no permanent control because that's the very nature of time. That's the very nature of life. Very nature of humanity. So that's not pessimistic. It's change your mindset, change the way you view the world. And a lot of people, I think, are scared. When we're talking here and we start off, and you said, oh, Tulsi Gabbard, I liked her. She's good, etc. You want to think the best, and but rose tinted glasses stop you from being calm on the ride. You know, the fact is the ride is pretty heavy, and everybody who gets to a certain level of power seems and appears to be a part of the system. And so, if we're fighting the system in some way to slow it down or change its direction, we can't put our faith in the system. We've got to put our faith elsewhere. So you're right, decentralized, but it's all about how we relate to each other, how we the next generation is going to argue better than the last generation. Like our generation can argue better than those in the 80s, 70s, and 60s, and so on
Mm,
and so forth. So we just got to keep going along this path. We're not really in control, and we probably got to accept we're not in control, but we've got to look to say, okay, we can do the very simple thing with the center of our own worlds. We can to teach our children well. We can do the right thing while we're here, and we can be some form of symbol or model for how the future generations also take this stream of time, consciousness, and technological revolution that's constantly hitting you in the face as a human.
very good. Sage advice, Johnny. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the thing that you said about uh, getting an accurate read on reality, or critical to that is following your work.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause it may be mistaken. There may be errors. You may have misjudged or misread. However, I think it's useful to look at something from all sorts of perspectives, all sorts of interpretations, and look for coherence. And of course, your work is really important in that.
You're beautiful.
My own personal experience. So I'll have your links in the description below. Really appreciate this. Any last words, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm doing loads of things at the moment. Loads of things. I'm really getting on with stuff. Hopefully more and more. I got really something really exciting. I'm announcing it a little bit now because I've recorded the first episode and it was immense. I'm doing a new quiz show, independent media quiz show called Truth Bomb, and because it's my baby, because it's all mine. And I got to do it the way I like. It's really fun, really silly at places, but really informative. It allows people who come on, the contestants, to not only give the answer that the establishment narrative wants you to give, but also to give their own answer and to add a truth bomb here and there. And it is what I thought it would be. It's really a good way to kind of understand or have experts explain things in a much more fun way. So it's going to be a really, really good. The first episode I'm hoping is going to be released to my Patreons maybe in about a week, 2 weeks, and then hopefully it will be weekly. Though it's a lot of work, and it will be members of the independent media community facing off against each other. And you, of course,
I have been invited. Yes,
you have been invited. I'm recording the second one later on today. I hope to record as many as possible. It's possibly actually one of the best things that, or best formats for my work. Like for what I'm trying to do, which is progress the debate. It will be able to be watched by both people who accept the narrative and people who don't accept the narrative. Mostly, as long as they've got a sense of humor, and hopefully, I'm trying to see, and hopefully, I'm going to have some relatively funny comedians coming on here and there as well. There's a big comedy aspect to it. But you can actually override all points if you make me laugh. So there's a corrupt laughter factor in it. There's a lot of corruption in it, to be honest. It turns out I'm a corrupt game show host who's willing to offer people the moon and try and turn contestants against each other. So I'm going to continue on that and enjoy it. But I really like. I think people will enjoy that.
Fabulous. And where's the best place people can find your work?
Newspaste.com, of course. You can go to johnnyvedmore.com, but really it'll just redirect you to Paste.
Newspaste.com.
Same on
Johnny,
YouTube, Rumble, Rockford. Have you?
Look forward to being on with you again at some point soon. And yes, one day I will appear in that Truth Bomb show, okay, and embarrass myself.
Don't be scared. Come to me. I promise I will be gentle.
I look forward to it. This is Crypto Rich and Johnny Vedmore signing out. Thank you.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Truth Bomb, the quick fire quiz show where I test the best the indie media has to offer on AI's official narrative with a truth bomb or two thrown in.
Permission to truth bomb. You will never see that statistic in any mainstream reporting.
You're guessing what the establishment wants you to guess. Well done. I have convinced some of the best indie researchers, journalists, and hosts on the World Wide Web to compete against each other in a quiz show which will shake the very foundations of mankind. If you had to choose between Africans and Asians, which one do you think you drop? Do you feel like a victim of an unfair system? Boo-hoo-hoo. Dan, do you feel like you're doing well, or are you resigned to being ruled by a Zionist wearing a cat on his head? Remember when we had our AM and FM radio? Remember that's when I used to listen to the news. Back when I was younger and they used to fry panes into buildings to make us all get the woo-woo.
What we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed.